The Australian Outback. It's been said here lies the true heart and soul of the country. This incredibly beautiful but harsh and dangerous land has a history of both inspiring the dreams of explorers and then crushing their hopes at the endless desolation. This ancient landscape is full of vast desert plains, rugged mountain ranges, dry riverbeds, steep canyons, and every now and then a hidden oasis to stumble upon. And this ancient land had an ancient people living in it, the indigenous tribes of the desert, who learned how to survive in the harshest of places and knew where that most precious of commodities lay, water. And then came the Europeans in the 1800s, who I've been inspired by for this trip. They pushed into the interior in search of imagined inland seas, pastoral grounds, or routes across the country. These men suffered starvation, dehydration, exposure, and sometimes death as they bravely traversed the land. They came across those desert tribes and were often guided to water for survival, and their stories inspire me. So I'm heading off on a 16-hour drive into the interior of Australia to set off on my own outback adventure to discover more about the history of the great explorers. I want to spend the next 5 days walking off track and cross country through some spectacular outback scenery as I carry limited food rations that an explorer would have. I want to only carry gear and wear clothing that those men in the 1800s had access to, as I experience the highs and lows of some of our country's most remote and secluded landscapes. Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. This is a big one. I'm in the Volcafana Gammon Ranges National Park, and for the next 5 days I'll be doing about 50 k's off track through this country, and I'm doing it as an 1800s explorer. Now I've been over the last few months researching about the outback explorers in this country's history, and I'm fascinated with the hardships that these men put up with and the kind of country that they walked through and how intimidating and remote it must have felt. And so for the next 5 days I want to get just a small sample of that, using the kind of gear, clothing and food that they would have had in these kind of environments. And this is wild country, this is real outback country out here. Oh, the flies are crazy already. And I'm doing this walk in spring because bugger doing it in the middle of summer when temperatures get up to 40 degrees. Even now in spring it's going to get up to about 30 degrees on this walk. It's already 27 degrees right now, which is amazing. Since the last trip I did was up in the snow, -5 in the high country, so this is very different. But we're expected to get a bit of rain, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, so I'm going to have to be a bit strategic where I sleep tonight, because no tent or anything like that. Maybe I'll have to find an overhang or a cave or something like that. But now the traditional people of this area who lived here for many years are the Adonayama Dayanaya people. Forgive me if I got that wrong. I tried my best to try and get the pronunciation and write that down because it's quite a long name. But I'll talk a little bit about them later in the video. And there's still a community of them that live nearby here in the Gammon Ranges, which is really cool. I was just talking about the local Indigenous people who frequented these areas, and then I come across this. This is a scar tree. I'm guessing this is most likely from them cutting out the bark for a shield or for like a grounding, like a gourd kind of thing where you could carry like a basket, or you can like grind, grind seeds and stuff in I'm not quite sure what it's for, but it'd be for one of those two, I would say. But that is a pretty special find to see something like that out here. Oh, check out that cave. That's the kind of thing I'll be looking forward to hunker down in tonight, I reckon, just in case it rains during the night.
It's said that the first European who laid eyes on the Gammon Ranges was the famous explorer Edward John Eyre in 1840, when he stood on Mount Searle at the edge of the Flinders Ranges and saw another mountain range to the north across vast plains. 3 years later, surveyor Edward Charles Froome, whom Lake Froome is named after, explored the Gammon Ranges and gazed upon one of its highest mountains, which was later named Mount McKinley after John McKinley, who led a rescue mission for Burke and Wills. Several surveyors followed, but it wasn't later until the early 1900s that grazers really established themselves here, and so the area remained a remote and distant wilderness for most of colonial history.
Okay, that's definitely an option in there. Okay. This could have been great, but have a look at that. It stinks here because there's been a bunch of roos that have died in here, but yeah, this could have been a nice little spot, but it's obviously where they come to die, so I'll leave this little sacred death cave. I think I found my spot. Just had a little bit of a walk up here and have a look. Hopefully there's no dead bones here. Okay, all right, look at this. That's my spot right here. That is my spot. And it looks pretty good, no ants or anything like that. Yep, this is it. This is home for tonight in a beautiful little, look at that. I'm happy with that. Oh, it's just absolutely gorgeous and peaceful here. So otherwise, what I want to do now is I want to show you some of the gear that I've got on me. I'm going full traditional, full heritage on this trip. The two things that I have on this trip that are modern day equipment is my emergency medical kit, which has obviously emergency medical gear, and it has my PLB, my GPS, and then my camera gear. But besides that, everything is heritage. So in here is my bedroll, and I'll talk a little bit about how I carry that around later on the trip. But in here is 2 oil skins. I've got a woolen blanket, and then I've also got my woolen jacket in here. Just a couple of clothes like socks and things like that. I've got 2 pots, one for boiling water, one for drinking out of. In here's my tucker bag, and I've got all my food in here. Now these are all dried foods. I'm going to go over this stuff tomorrow and show you what I've got for food for this trip, but it's very limited. I don't have a lot of food on this trip. I am going to go hungry. Now in my pouch, my haversack you might call it, emergency medical kit, camera gear. So let's put that aside. That's my modern gear. Okay, I've got flint and steel, I've got a pipe and some tobacco, a few bits of cutlery there, a compass and a map, and my old hickory knife. And basically this is what the old fellas could have carried on them back in the day. And in regards to clothing, this is a cotton flannel shirt. I also have a woolen flannel shirt as well, the same kind. These are cotton trousers, and specifically the high-waisted trousers which they wore in the mid-1800s. With some leather braces basically. Got my Akubra hat as well, traditional Akubra hat, and then I've got leather boots. They're very dirty at the moment, but these are my leather Rossi boots. So I'm also wearing the kind of gear that an old explorer from the mid-1800s would have been wearing. Let's make some dinner because it's coming to 6:30 now. For cooking on this trip, obviously the old fellas would have just made a fire straight on the ground. The thing is, in the Gammon Ranges National Park, you are allowed campfires in like little established fireplaces and stuff, but you're not allowed to collect firewood, which makes it a little bit hard for me because I can't bring my own firewood into these when I'm walking. You can bring your own firewood obviously into the car camping areas. Basically they want little stoves and things like that. So what I've opted for this trip is to go with the twig stove. Now the reason I've gone with the twig stove is with twigs you know, it's not technically firewood in the sense that you're cutting big pieces. These little twigs aren't habitat for natural animals. I'm pretty sure this is going to be okay. It's in a contained little fireplace. It's basically the same as an alcohol stove, really, except for the fact that you're using twigs instead of alcohol as your fuel. So that's what I've opted for this for this trip. So some crackers. All right, that's done. Here in the outback, you don't waste any food or moisture. So that kind of manky soup, it's all right, it's kind of salty. I'm going to drink all this.
Well, good morning all. Definitely wasn't as cold as I expected it to be last night. Probably only got down to maybe, I don't know, maybe 12 degrees or something, and with the woolen blanket I was quite warm. I didn't even have to wear my jacket last night. So, I mean, you do expect very, very cold nights in the desert, in the outback. You read the accounts of Wills from the Burke and Wills expedition, and when he was starving to death, and it was around July, I think, at Cooper's Creek, he talks about how bitterly cold it was for him, especially at night time, but all they had was one oilskin to share between them, and they didn't really have much on them. And of course the fact they were starving didn't help as well to be able to produce body warmth, but they were really cold. So you don't think of the outback, you don't think of cold conditions, but in the winter time it can get quite cold, especially at night time. So last night I noticed my water bag was dripping, so I put the pot under it, and look at that, that's a coffee there. Now I thought I'd show you my rations for this trip, and this is based off the kind of food that explorers in the 1800s could have carried with them. Now I've got these called ship biscuits or hardtack. Now they would have carried flour, more likely just plain flour, and then they would have cooked up damper bread as they go along, but because I can't have fires out here, I opted for ship's biscuit, which is like a dehydrated biscuit. It's very hard and it needs to soak in water. I have dehydrated apple here. I'll probably have to eat this early in the trip because I don't think it'll last long. I have some dehydrated
kangaroo meat and dehydrated beef, and I can eat this plain or I can mix it in a soup and make a broth. Here I have just a little bit of coffee, and here's sugar, which was very important to them. And then I also have a little flask of whiskey, just for at night time I can have a swig. This is for 5 days, and it's probably the equivalent of 2 cups of flour. This consists of 2 apples. This is probably about 800 grams, maybe 900 grams of meat. So not a lot of food, not a lot to get me going in this trip. Now, many of you may already know this, but my tobacco and tobacco pipe is not some, modern luxury I'm bringing out here with me. But tobacco was an essential part of rations for the explorers. That amongst their, small rations of food that they carried out with them, they'd also have tobacco and tobacco pipes with them. And the reasoning for that, I think it's got to do with 2 factors. One, it's obviously a morale booster, and the other reason was it's actually a hunger suppressant. So when you smoke tobacco, it can starve away those hunger pains that they might have been having. And that's why you find pretty much all of the early explorers carried tobacco with them and tobacco pipes. I want to get off a bit early today while it's still cool, and I've got a bit of cloud cover today, which would be nice. It won't be too hot, but I don't want it to rain on me while I'm walking, but can't help it if that's the case. Depending on which way I go for this trip today, it could be in between 15 to 20 k's walk. And this trip is, I kind of have a set route, but I can change it depending on things like the weather, and definitely need to aim for water tonight. There's a chasm near here. Apparently it has water in it. I'm hoping, because I got about 2 litres left of water on me. Now, yes, it's true, the explorers of old were always in parties. So in cases like Burke and Wills, they were in a very large party. Other people like Stuart were in much smaller parties so they could move faster. And often they would have, rather camels or horses with them as a way to carry a lot of their food and a lot of their gear. But doing some reading on the history over the last few months, I've noticed there are many cases where they would break up into much smaller parties, like maybe 2 or so, and they'd have to walk quite a few days to get to, set up a camp or a depot station where they'd be waiting supplies and stuff like that. So there were absolutely cases where the explorers were on foot without animals or camels or horses, or just in groups of 2, and in some cases on foot by themselves, like the famous case of Giles, when he separated from Gibson and gave his last remaining horse to Gibson, and Giles had to walk, I think it was 9 days, with just 11 sticks of horse jerky and a keg or a barrel of water, and he walked 9 days through the desert, the hot desert, and that's a pretty amazing survival story, that one. So yes, there are cases where explorers were alone and had to carry their gear on them instead of pack animals. Another scar tree. That is really cool. I love seeing these, and it just shows this landscape has been used for many years. And that's probably why this was an area where the Indigenous would camp. Because have a look at that cave. That's a fantastic cave. You could fit a few people in there. Looks like we could have a bit of rain coming in, so I might just take shelter here for a bit. I mean, it's just a drizzle. I do have to move on today. Like, I might just have to accept walking in the drizzle today. And you can literally smell that smell of, you know, when water hits earth it's been dry for a long time. The soil smell. Yeah, it's really strong right now. Look at that. It's a huge bell or bowl or whatever you call them. Starting to open up, that's for sure. Look at that mountain over there. It's pretty significant. So I keep seeing wildlife, seeing roos, seeing those rock wallabies or whatever they are, seeing emus, but every time I pass them I can't get my camera out quick enough and they quickly scurry away. I guess I'm very noisy with my leather boots and my clanging pots, and you know, from what I've read, it was much the same with the early explorers, that they actually found it very hard to hunt big game. They used to shoot a lot of things like birds and stuff like that, just because the big game was really hard to catch, because I guess they weren't very quiet with their horses and their camels and their boots and things like that. And so that's why the Indigenous definitely had an advantage over them when it came to hunting, because they were barefoot, very stealthy, very quiet. Alright, I'm aiming for those rocks over there. I reckon I might find a bit of a shelter from this rain, and then I can climb this big hill here. Alright, I found a little cave here, a rock overhang. I can keep my stuff here dry while I go climb that big hill. This is incredible. Alright, it's really good. You see a full view of what this is, the pound, and this is where they used to do grazing. Good to get a vantage point of what I want to do. I'm quite happy with this viewpoint from here. I don't think I need to climb that mountain, but I'm looking forward to going into that chasm there. Apparently it's epic in there, and apparently from what I've researched, there is a water hole in there, a permanent water hole. At least I hope. This is my lunch. Some beef jerky, some dried apples, and 1 cup of water. I'm now entering very gorgy country, and I'm gonna keep walking until I find a water source, and that's where I'll stop for the evening. Now, they do say you should be well aware of the conditions before heading into a place like this, because flash flooding can happen at any time of the year. I know that checking the weather forecast beforehand, that there's not much more than 3 mil over this whole trip coming in, so I'll be fine. Check out this Xantheria, and this is what they use to make their shields from, their spears. Local Indigenous people. This is a double-headed one. It's always a good sign when you see them. Water. Fresh rainwater. That's a good sign. I feel like sipping out of it. It's fresh. Anyway, there should be plenty. Hopefully there should be more up this way. Now, I'm not going to drink this yet. I'll finish the water I have. Oh, that feels so good. Because I'm pretty positive if I found this already, that there's going to be more water upstream. That is a relief. Now it's all about finding a good camp because I know there's going to be water up here. It's about as good as you can get to find flowing water, non-stagnant water. Alright, I need to find a cave. This could be an okay cave. I'll keep looking. This will be last resort. It's a long way up to carry all the gear. Whoa, now that's a cave. Okay, I gotta go up there. Whew. That is epic. There's a little hole there at the top. That's cool. I don't know if I'd camp in it. Actually, this little spot in here, I could sweep away all that poo, clear it, and I could lay right on there, and then I'm protected. And the bags, the gorge is right there, so I could actually go explore that tonight. So I think that's the option. Get rid of all that wallaby poo. Alright, got camp set up in there. There's a nice little kind of oasis in here. Have a look. It is pretty nice. I'm just so buggered I couldn't be bothered trying to find anywhere better, so this will have to do. I'm going to go for the rest of the afternoon, just explore all the way up to the chasm, get some water. I'll have a late dinner and then just go straight to bed, but yeah, it's beautiful right now, so I'm going to take the opportunity while I'm feeling a little bit okay and I don't have to carry a lot of gear. Now, for those of you who don't know, water bags were actually invented to serve the very purpose of outback exploration in Australia. And they're a perfect way to carry water, especially tying them on horses or camels. Sometimes they had like 10 litre, 20 litre water bags. This is a 5 litre one. And so the idea is the canvas swells, and once the canvas swells and gets wet, then it holds the water pretty good. And it does drip a little bit, but I mean, this can hold water for quite a long time. Yeah, and they're just really handy for outback exploration to carry large amounts of water. And I read a really funny story. I can't remember the name of the explorer. He hung up his water bag in a tree one time, because usually you hang them up in trees because if they have any pressure on the bottom, they tend to leak a little faster. So he hung his water bag up in the tree, and he had a very, very thirsty camel, and this camel would give him a lot of trouble. And the camel just came bounding and basically wanted to get into the water, and the camel bit the water bag. It popped the cork out of the top, and a jet of water went flying up in the air, and they lost lots of their water, and yeah, they were in a bad situation after that as well. So very good. I'm going to go check out this chasm. These grass trees are huge. Look how much taller it is than me. I dare say he's been longer on this earth than me as well. You're an old fella. It's really humid and muggy in here. It feels like the top end. The will to survive and to thrive and to keep pushing forward. How that gum has managed to grow out of that cliff beats me. The Bunyip Chasm. Should I enter? Yeah, I think I should climb up that. Okay, tripod and big camera have to go there because this is sketchy. Oh, that was a sketchy climb. To think that places like this are just existing in the world. Wow. I'm going to take a drink from here. This water should be pretty good. It's filtered through the rocks and the moss.
It was so hot last night. I ended up sleeping with no socks, no shirt on, and I was just sweating. And then finally this morning it cooled down a bit. My muscles feel really sore, but a bit more open country today. And then try to find my way into a gorge tonight where there might be a place I can camp where there's some water, hopefully. We'll see how we go. And for brekkie, I'll show you what I got going. Because I've got plenty of water, I thought I'd boil up just a little bit of kangaroo jerky, and I've got one ship's biscuit in there. This hardtack is a lot nicer when you boil it with jerky.
But anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I'm carrying, the horseshoe bedroll. That's what this is called, and it's called a horseshoe because it's rolled up and curled over in the shape of a horseshoe, obviously. Now in our history, Australian history, we have what's called the Swagman, and the traditional way of carrying a swag over your shoulder was rolled it up and then with some kind of a strap and then slung over your shoulder. But there were varying ways that you could carry your swag, and this is one of them. It's called the horseshoe, and I got onto this and I thought I want to give this one a go, and I actually find it's actually better for long distances what I'm doing for this trip, because it definitely distributes the weight a lot more evenly on your shoulder. So I quite like it, and you do see old pictures of swagmen and explorers carrying their bedroll in this manner. Now, of course, bedrolls and things like that, blankets, would have been carried on the horses, on the carts, on the camels and things like that back in the day with the old explorers. But I have read stories, for example, in the Burke and Wills expedition, where Burke, he was a bit of a hard man, a bit of a hard leader. He pretty much forced his men to carry their own gear on them as they walked, because he wanted to free up the wagon to have less weight on it. So there are definitely cases where explorers, outback explorers, would have carried their gear, and no doubt they probably carried bedrolls in this similar kind of manner. So there's a little bit of history about the bedroll and the method that I'm doing for this trip. Sing Matilda, won't sing Matilda, no Mama wolf, sing Matilda with me. And this here is an old well. Remnants of our settler history. Oh, it's deep down there. I don't want to drop the camera. It goes down a long way. And obviously this would have been an old windmill back in the day. And the windmill would obviously, from the wind, be able to pump the water up from the well into a trough or something like that, and this would have been used for grazing.
These remnants date back to the early 1900s, when pastoral settlement first occurred in the area. It's amazing to think that even in these dry, barren places, people pushed in with the little they had to set a life up for themselves. Wells and windmill pumps were vital for water, otherwise life would not be supported out here for the small cattle stations that were established. Today, the area is scattered with the old farming artifacts from the turn of the century, and just like the explorers who came before, the pastoralists would have been tough old fellas as well.
It's a lot hotter today with no cloud cover, so I'm already sweating. I can feel it draining me. I'm gonna try and go out, get off this open land in the hot sun, and I'm gonna navigate down that way. As you can see, a bit of a valley and a gorge. It's a natural waterway. It'll be a long walk, but it should take me all the way to a spring that I'm aiming for. Well, at least I hear there's a spring there. I'll tell you a little bit of interesting history to the area as well. So for those of you who are aware of R.M. Williams, and obviously leather boots, leather goods, clothing, things like that. Well, R.M. Williams back in the 1900s actually met someone while camping here in the Gammon Ranges who he claimed taught him everything he knew about leather making, shoe making. So we can thank the famous R.M. Williams line of boots to the Gammon Ranges. I think that's pretty cool. Oh, water. Look at that. Starting to open up. Oh, hello. There he goes. I love those rock wallabies. They're really cool. They're hard to capture on camera though because they're so fast. And they're out of here before you know it. I think it's lunchtime. I should get moving. Ooh. Look at that. Deaf in the outback. Is one of the few four-wheel drive tracks I'm crossing on this trip. That is a monster river gum. Look at it. Holy moly, look what was in my bag. Far out. Look at this thing. What the hell are you doing in there? When did I pick you up? Oh, look at the pincers on that thing. That is one. Yeah, I don't want that anywhere near me. Ugh. Look at the pincers on it. Whoa. Well, I don't know where I picked him up, whether it was last night, he crawled in there last night, or when I've been sitting down for a break, but goosh, I'll definitely be sitting in some more cleared area, setting up tonight. But last night I was kind of in a very kind of spidery and insecty looking place, so I'll choose my campsite wisely tonight. There should be an area of water around here, so I'm coming for a little walk. It's very dry. Oh, look at that. Okay, there is some water here. That is a good sign. I'm just putting my gear down here because I found a beautiful little oasis and I just want to have a look around and see if I can find a good place to camp. Would you have a look at this? Look at that for a swimming hole. Wonder if the bunyip lives in there. Swimming with the mozzies! Whoa! Oh, it's so manky in here. Oh, I feel like I'm going to get pulled under by a bunyip. I've just set up camp, and for tonight's camp I've gone for the plough point setup with my oilskin tarp, which is what I love about this oilskin tarp I've made. It's quite a big one, so I can use it as a bedroll like a traditional swag, or I can do a tarp kind of setup, tent setup, so if it does rain, which I doubt it will, that'll keep the rain off me. And have a look, I'm literally right here at the billabong, so it's a bloody fantastic camp. I'm very happy with tonight's camp. Dinner is done. I've filled up my water bag just for the night, and because it's 6 o'clock and I've probably got about an hour and a half of light left, I'm going to climb up that mountain because I reckon it's going to be an epic sunset view from the top. I can already tell this is going to be epic up here. That's where we're going. On the summit.
Well, I've been to some pretty epic, amazing places in my time, but this trip in this outback scenery will definitely be up there. I don't say that lightly.
Well, I made it back to camp. The flies are still out, but I'm gonna have a little bit of whiskey and a pipe, and then I'm gonna go to bed. So I'll see you in the morning. Well, last night was the first night where I had to put on all my clothing. Both shirts, my jacket, double pair of socks, and it was still cold. It was so chilly last night compared to the last few nights because it was a clear night, the stars were beautiful, and I just woke up feeling really rough, a bit slow, body sore from sleeping on the hard ground. So that there is my breakfast this morning. One ship's biscuit or hardtack and a little bit of jerky to make some kind of a broth. Yep, those are my rations. I am running low, you could say that. And goes the kangaroo mate and the ship's biscuit. Oh, how's that for a soup, huh? What do you reckon? Breakfast of kings. By the way, all this food on the trip, I made it myself the week beforehand. Dehydrated everything, smoked the meat kind of thing. So I didn't buy any of this, kind of keeping in line again with how they would have done it. They would have made this and prepared this stuff before they went on their big trips. Or sometimes they made, like with meat, if a horse died or if they caught a roo, they'd smoke the meat there on the journey. I've got to fill my water bag all the way up today because where I'm camping tonight there's going to be no water. So I want to make the most of this water bag. And it's interesting trying to find this spring. I kind of get a little sense of the dread that you feel, or the anxiety you feel when you're running out of water and you're in the outback and it's hot and you need to find water. And just imagine what it was like for the old fellas and the despair they would have felt when they couldn't find water and they were running low. So I mean, it's just a tiny taste of what they must have gone through, really. Now for this trip, I was aware of the canyons and the gorges that would probably have water, and the reason why, well, I do have a map, and I also got in contact with the rangers before this trip. They were very, very helpful, the local ranger to this area, just in regards to where water is and helpful information and stuff like that. And you know, safety as well. They've got my kind of rough planned walking loop or whatever. So yeah, it's just good to have that back up. Now I know it kind of takes away from the outback explorers and what they would have felt like, you know, just having to find water. And there was many cases where they literally had no idea where they were going to find water, and they had to read the landscape and look for gorges and mountain ranges and things like that, and estimate that there might probably be water in there. But at the same time, it wasn't always the case that they found the water just by luck or by searching. Many times they did have rough maps, or they had guides, just like I called the ranger. They had guides who directed them where they would find water, and those guides would be local Indigenous people. And sometimes they would hire local Indigenous people as guides to guide them through the desert and to help them. Other times they'd come across tribes and they'd you know, build up a relationship with them and give gifts to them and ask them where they would find water. And many times the local tribes were very friendly and were willing to give advice on, oh, there's a water hole over here, over in that direction. So yeah, the Outback explorers did have direction. Local Indigenous people were living in those areas and were able to give them ideas, you know, roughly this direction, this much distances towards this water hole. So it still would have been nowhere near like what it is today, where you got maps and everything like that. And it would have been pretty intimidating in my opinion. But there was still the fact that they had guides and they had local information on where they could find water. Anyway, it's getting hotter. I really should get going and start my walk today. There's only one word for a gum of this size, and that is majestic. Look at it. Look at the hollow. Jeez. Look at that. You could build a little home in here. I've actually seen photos of old Swagman sheltering in big hollows like this. Look at that. Another natural cave. And there's a mummified roo in there, a wallaby, 2 of them. Doesn't even smell. It's just, it's so dry that they just mummify. It's interesting when you find these caves that you find lots of these skeletons and bones, and it must be the place they come to die. When life is running out and they're ready to pass on, they shelter in a nice cool cave and away they go. I think I'll have a bit of water before I start hitting the flats. Now, look at that, I lost my kookaburra if ever. Couple of cockies. Not sure what they are, if they're corellas or, yeah, not sure the species of them. Okay, now I'm going across big open country. Now, some of the walk that I'm doing, most of it is all off track. Some of the walk I'm doing, I cross over some roads for drive tracks, and then there are a few little trails that I crisscross over, especially in those gorge walks. And just back there, I did a little bit of a detour and walked to a campground that had a water tank, and I did top up some water just because I'm not going to have any water out here and it's bloody hot today, so I'm going to be sweating it. And while I was there, I got talking. The first person I've seen on this trip, I think his name was Steve, and he was a great fella, just getting away out here in this beautiful country, and we had a good chat. So it was just good to chat to, you know, someone like-minded who loves this kind of lifestyle and the outdoors and the solitude of the outback. Yeah, otherwise I've got a big walk ahead of me. How cool is this rock formation? And I'm walking past a nice little, look at that, that's where the kangaroos hang out. Nice and shady in here. These natural game trails from roos, goats and emus, they're definitely the way to go. They help cut across the land a lot easier. But sometimes they go off in the wrong direction. Ah, check this out. Old fence line. Wow, that is a cool find. An old horseshoe. I'm going to chuck it on here. I'm going to sit it upwards. There we go, for good luck. Now these big gums, just so people don't copy what I just did, you're really not meant to rest under them, especially not camp underneath them, because they have a tendency to drop their branches. And it's not even particularly on windy days, they say. On these hot, still days, they can just drop a branch. And if I was sitting there and that thing landed on me, that's good night, Luke. So yeah, don't do what I just did. Well, this is the end of the cattle fence I can follow. That's not the direction I want to go on there, because that way, it's that way. I feel like I'm in a bit of trouble here. Water's running low, and I just cannot find a place to set up camp. It's all rocky like that, and I'm at the end of my tether, so to speak. Okay, and this is why you bring emergency medical kits. Even though I'm trying to replicate the old time as much as possible, sometimes you just get into a bit of strife. I was not feeling good, so I've had a little bit of a rehydration satchel to get some salts and stuff into me, and that's given me a bit of a boost. I reckon I got about a K walk to another spot I might try out for camping. It's probably get there around 5 o'clock. I'm going to be so pooped when I get there. I probably won't film much for the rest of the day. But, oh well, that's just how it is. I think this little patch of sand is going to do it for me for tonight. Because I'm wrecked and I've got a bit of shade here, so... If you find yourself being really fussy with food, all you need to do is make yourself suffer out in the wilderness, and then food, no matter what it is, will always taste great. Bang! Yeah, that's right. I'm watching you. Watching your every move. Early morning this morning, as I want to climb up that mountain for the sunrise. Let's get a coffee on the boil. Up the mountain we go. Whew. My body is definitely feeling it. Sunrise on the summit. Awesome. Oh, it's amazing sitting here looking at the sunrise over Lake Frome. So out towards the distance there, that's where Lake Frome is. And Lake Frome has its own history as well in outback exploration, because
I know that Charles Sturt Party, when he was pushing into the interior, he sent a couple of his men right to the edge of Lake Frome, but on the other side of it. And Lake Frome up to today, the local Indigenous people here, they use that area to hunt emu and kangaroo still. So they're still practicing their traditional hunting ways out over there. So it's really special just to look out. I'm just thinking, so this trip has just made me thought about how harsh it really was for the Outback explorers, and they really were tough folk, and it took its toll. There's a lot of deaths in our history out in the wilderness, and quite horrible deaths if you think about it. I think 360 kilometers northeast from here, I think it's 1861, Burke and Wills, Coopers Creek, starved to death. And then 260 kilometers northeast from here, I do believe in 1845, James Poole died from heat exhaustion. That was on the Charles Sturt mission into the interior. Not a good way to go. And then in 1874, 1,300 kilometers in that direction, northwest, Alfred Gibson separated from Gulls, and he took the last horse and he disappeared off into the desert, never to be seen again, never found his remains. And now we know that desert as the Gibson Desert. So as you can see in our history, we have quite a lot of these outback explorers who perished here in the vast outback wilderness.
After only 5 days out here, I reflect on life for those men that spent months at a time going hungry, thirsty and exhausted. They seem to be on another level, though these were not the super athletes of their time, but common men who set out for varying reasons. And yet their endurance is testament to the human spirit. In Ernest Giles' diary he writes, "Being in a chronic state of burning thirst, my general plight was dreadful in the extreme. My arms, legs, thighs were so punctured with spines, it was agony only to exist. My clothes, especially inside my trousers, were a perfect mass of prickly points. It was impossible to get a moment's peace or rest from the attacks of the flies. The pests kept eating into our eyes. Every little sore or wound on the hands or face was covered by them in swarms." To imagine this kind of prolonged suffering seems out of reach to the modern Western man, and yet men like Giles paved the way forward in exploration of land for our civilization to be built upon. With all the good and bad that may have came from colonisation, we must at least give these brave men gratitude for this.
Water bag. He served me well. Now just a nice morning walk along this riverbank, and then I make it to the car where yummy food awaits me. There's the car. Let's feast.
Well everyone, what an adventure that was. I'm so stoked that I managed to complete this. I feel absolutely wrecked, but it's been a great one. And I just want to say thank you so much for supporting the channel and helping out financially, because with your support I'm able to do these bigger adventures and it really helps cover the costs. So just want to say thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, leave a comment, tell me what you think of the video, and there's going to be plenty more big adventures to come this year. Thank you, have a good one.